Let's do a bit of exercise. Can you all get up? So it's probably good in the morning. A bit of exercise. You go away from emails. Sorry, now that's interesting. Can everybody below 60 sit down, please? Let's see who's left over. There are a couple of guys. There must be a couple of guys. Great. So I'm wondering, you have about maybe 5 to 10 years ahead of you in this business. What's your opinion on AI? Do you really think that changes your daily life? So one of those guys who were standing up, what do you think? So there's a mic just here. Any volunteer? Some people might be afraid. Some might think, well, that's great.
I'll have to break the ice for myself because I'm not accustomed to speaking, which, as you know, Yvonne, I'll be doing tomorrow afternoon. I'm listening to what's being said here so I can edit what it is that won't have been covered. But as I take the long perspective on things, having started in Hollywood here in the late 70s, this business has kept me young, actually. A lot of running around, keeping up with the new technologies. But I've never seen anything like this with AI. Because how it affects the next generation of people operating. And just to give you a teaser or two, let's just imagine when I'm 70, which is 9 years from now, and however old you're going to be. Think about the experience of going into the editing room where your editing assistant is talking to you like an Alexa, saying, I think you crossed the 180-degree line there. The sight lines are wrong. Did you intend to do that? And the editor would talk back and say, well, what do you think? Does it, the Alexa will be your assistant and telling you, well, based on its knowledge of editing with you all these years, it's probably something you might want to think about. It's not going to give you the answer. It's just you'll be having this dialogue like you do with your cats or your dogs, It's therapeutic, and I think that on the creative side of it, we're neglecting what it can do. We talk about all the nuts and bolts and the APIs and how we all plug it in together as when I started in this business, it was all mechanical. You loaded up film, you ready to go? All right, well, I'll continue this tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, great. It's one of our speakers on the session. Thanks for sharing this. You've been quite positive about it. Is there somebody maybe from a different generation below 40 who's afraid? Come on, guys, you were all sitting down, so you must be at least below 60. A volunteer? Somebody wants to share a thought? Hashtags, they have been invented for AI, right? I mean, we're all kind of a crowd intelligence why we create hashtags, yeah?
Hi, Gary Morris, definitely not 40. It would be nice to see some descriptions on the difference of AI and ML, because some of what we were just hearing, which is so needed, and it's nice that it's available in the cloud, and some of these things can be done by setting your parameters, by having the metadata that's there. A lot of it really is machine learning. So it'd be nice to see some of the differentiation as the papers see some more.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, that leads us to our next speaker. So thanks for your contributions as well, and we might continue the discussion in the next 2 days, so be prepared. We have Norm Hollyn here, and he has many talents. He's a professor on the USC School of Cinematic Arts here in LA. But he's also a longtime editor in film and movies and music, and he knows actually quite well the old and the new media world, and can tell us a lot about AI and detecting the emotions and how we deal with that. So.
Great, thank you, Yvonne. So first, that long title that you saw about production and security, no idea where that came from. So I'm going to switch it up on you, so sorry about that. I come from the creative side of things, so we know what creatives are like, right? They're the pains in the asses. They're the ones who say, well, it was good enough for me 10 years ago, why don't we still do it that way? They also said, I saw this cool thing that's going to happen in 10 years, why can't we do that now, right? So we want everything now and cheap and fast, right? So, by the way, I should say that I'm on my second cup of coffee, which is double my normal dose. and I also was born and raised in New York. So if I'm talking too fast or jumbling, just like let me know, and I'll slow down. So what I want to talk about is how we, in the editing rooms and on the creative side, what we really need, what AI is good for, what AI is not good for, and how we can actually make it so those of us who are doing the editing work and the post-production work can really be served and really stop complaining to everybody about it. My background on this is that I was one of the original adopters when we went to digital NLEs. And at that point, there were two groups of people. There were the people who said, yeah, I love this digital aspect of it. I love editing on, well, no one loved editing on Ediflex, but it certainly was the beginning of something amazing. And so for those of us who started and embraced this digital editing, there's a word for us, we're called editors. But there were also groups of people who were like, no, I need to touch the film, this 35 millimeter stuff that we lose and gets dirty and scratched. No, I really want that. And those people today are called ex-editors. So I fully believe that what we need today to do is we see AI already entering into the editing room. As we see the possibilities of it, we need to figure out how we do not become ex-filmmakers. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So first, I'd like to give you a quote from someone who I think is one of the great thinkers about AI, Kai-Fu Lee. And he talks about what it's not good for, at least right now, snapshot in time, complex planning, precise hand-eye coordination, unknown, and this is really important to me, unknown and unstructured things, which is what we deal with all the time in the editing room, and things that require feelings, empathy, and compassion, right? So those are the things that Kai-Fu thinks are really things that AI can't do right now. Behar, who's a designer, basically talked about how we can make it smart and compassionate. So everybody's sort of circling around the idea that AI has a lot of uses, but what about the emotional part of it? So right now, right, these are the things that Kai-Fu Lee also says, that these are the job categories that probably can't be replaced by AI, at least anytime in the near future. And I'm highlighting the fiction side because it's the closest one to what we're dealing with here at this conference. All the other ones, great, but I'm not about to be in criminal defense law right now. So I'm much more concerned with what we do here in film and TV. So what is it good for? These are the things that we see happening right now. Right? So we just heard actually about some of the uses in terms of MAMs, mentioned object recognition, transcription, and all of that. These are the things that we see it working for now, or the hint of it working now. So transcription's the super obvious one. There's about approximately, I'll use a technical term, a gazillion different transcription services out there based on a few AI engines. I've used a number of these already to varying degrees of success. So let's pass transcription, because I think transcription's done. We know that that's working with AI, and will hopefully get better and better, at least in 95, 96%. Visual recognition, so search, we just heard a lot about that. Stock footage, as well as our own stock, our MAMs. So Pond 5, which is one of the bigger ones, well, not just, about 6-8 months ago, introduced a more visual search. So if I type in, let's say, snow, and then go, no, what I really meant was snow inside of a TV, and I drag an image onto it, in this case of an ancient Mac, because I like ancient Mac, back when I didn't need 50 dongles in order to use a Mac. It automatically finds snow inside other objects, which is fairly sophisticated and fairly helpful for me as I look at things. It means that in the taxonomy of what kind of words I can input to find things, it can be much freer for me. All right, so visual recognition. Right now, and we just heard about this, the generation of metadata. This is, for those of you who don't recognize it, this is a list of potential columns, bin columns in an Avid Media Composer. And this is just a small section of what we use. Last year, IBM and Stanford released this.
From several input takes
So by facial recognition, it's actually determining a lot of that metadata and then assembling it into clips using transcription, speech to text, and text to speech. It's actually aligning it up with lines of dialogue. We've got that in Avid now, sort of, and Adobe. But this is automatically doing it along with the metadata associated with it. Shot size, super important to me. The name of the character, super important to me. So all of this is happening. Search, this is, I'm going to skip over this because we just heard a lot about this, but these are some of the things that MAM search engines are beginning to do. Let's now talk about different uses for image recognition and image creation as we move towards hyperlocalization. So this is from a new company called Riff. They just came out of stealth mode about a month ago. What this basically is live replacement of objects. It identifies objects that exist and can remove them, replace them with other things. It's based on the fact, well, obviously it's based on image recognition. This increases the ability to localize our content, to replace labels on bottles with different sponsors, or an Arabic version of the Coke bottle as opposed to the English or the Spanish or language one. Hold on to this because we're going to come back to this concept in a couple of minutes. Along with the visual recognition, then this is now a simple webcam, simple off-the-shelf recognition of video available in the home. And you can see up at the top what the visual recognition is doing. Thinks it's an orange, not bad, not a Granny Smith, so not perfect. Yeah, maybe, yes, got it, okay. So now that this is more accessible, now we've got visual recognition on a high level, on a simple level. It's going to go down now and affect indie films, low-budget web series. All of that stuff is going to be much more possible for us. This is exciting to me. Script analysis we're already able to do on basis of shot identification, scene identification, so that you can see here, in this case, it's what characters exist in a film. You can also change it to go up, go up, go up, screen capture, right? So you can change it and look at sentiment, gender, and many other possibilities. This is huge for me in the final side of things, and it's even more important when we talk about the localization and the distribution side of things. So for the ROI people in the crowd, this is a script analysis which basically becomes genre-based and can predict with some degree of accuracy what a potential box office might be on the basis of elements that you put in. Is this a magic bullet? No. Is it horrifying on some level for me as a creative? Yes. But it's also pretty exciting because it overlaps a little bit with some work I'm doing with Google now in terms of research, where we're creating visual online lookbooks, which are visual recognition, but also color science, as well as some aspects of this, doing analysis from a text. All right, so now let's take the next step here. This is, once again, the Stanford Adobe project, and, well, I'll let him explain it.
But the real power of our system comes from the ability to do idiom-based editing. At the bottom here, we see our idiom builder, where users can combine several basic idioms to design different editing styles. Here we start with one of the most basic idioms, which says that performers should be visible in our edit while they are speaking. We now click Generate to automatically produce an edit that best satisfies the specified idioms across our entire scene. Now we see an edited version of the scene with the aligned script on its left and alternative clip choices sorted by similarity on the right. In this edit, we notice what filmmakers call a jump cut.
He's a bad kid.
Family.
All right, I'm going to
Are you
skip
sure
through
your
this
cousin
because
is
I
his
think
real
you've got the
father?
idea. Let me tell you that the first cut, the scene they came up with, is horrible. Right? It's really not good. We're in beta. It's dialogue-based only, and what it's missing is emotion. So it doesn't really understand performance at all at this point. What's the intent of story? What's the intent of screenplay? So that's where, for me, I mean, the idea of the idioms that he was talking about, is those are editing idioms. The idioms I'm talking about here is when you begin to look at real natural language processing and know that in the US, when we say a cat, that cat lost one of its lives, it's down to 8 lives now. That's true here, but in other cultures, the phrase is the cat has 7 lives. So when you say the cat's down to 8 lives, that means nothing. It's confusing. So the idea to really personalize and localize even the natural language processing is evolving for delivery. So let's now add the emotional part in this. So here is a relatively old description of the variety of adjectives and emotions that can draw for some simple ones. This is the beginning of the level that we need to do our work and assist it. By the way, I don't think we're going to have edited films completely by AI, but my God, if it can get me to a first cut, if I'm doing news and it can get me that first cut so then I can tweak it, if I'm doing fiction, it can do it, that's huge for me. But it needs to begin to recognize these things to take me to a usable first cut. So some of this you've probably already seen. Microsoft's Azure has a fairly good sentiment analysis tool where you can take a look at it and say there's probably 0 degree of contempt in this. Right? More complex expressions, I think it's pretty good on. Puzzling expressions, it's pretty good too. The only time that it really falls apart is when you have someone who, I don't know if there's anything inside, controversial, here we go. Justin Bieber's, this is the picture when he was arrested. Right? It's all happy there, man, except for a tiny bit of neutral. Right? So I don't know, that either says something about the AI technology or Justin Bieber, can't tell. So how can we translate this now into the uses for us in the editing room? So there are tools using Microsoft technology as well as others where you can now track faces, profiles and faces and attach emotions to them. This is actually pretty helpful to me when if I can look at dailies, now that directors are shooting hours and hours and hours worth of dailies every single day, it's impossible for me to stay up to camera while they're shooting that much material. So how do I differentiate the material? How do I make selections that I need to make in order to be successful? So here's what a timeline looks like now. What's this timeline based on? Clips? I would love to have a version of this which is emotional based, so that I could actually look at that and see how I get involved, or how my audience might get involved, or how the actors, what the actors are presenting. Right now, I can say who's involved in a scene. Walter Murch, famously, that's my one Walter Murch of the day. How Walter Murch has a way using index cards of identifying who's in a scene, and he can look at a wall and say, wow, we haven't seen this character in a long time. Now, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But I'd like to be saying, well, we haven't been happy in a long time here. Right? Or there's been no puzzlement or complexity or whatever. I would really love to have a timeline that basically talks about emotions. All right, now let's combine this with, and I'm sorry I'm whizzing through this stuff pretty fast, I don't have much time left, but add face replacement to this. So this technology has been around for a couple of years in development mode. Adobe announced it last week at Adobe Max, where using a webcam or any kind of video cam, you can affect the material which is on your video. So it's now mimicking motion and emotion that exists from our source person, as well as with a bunch of sliders to be able to go visually different as well as emotionally different. All right, so right now we can get our characters' faces, and using the Voco audio, we can actually create lines of dialogue that were never there. By the way, ethically, we really got to deal with this stuff, right? Because it's horrifying on many levels. But from a technical point of view, we can now add, manipulate, change, create entire new lines, and the faces to match. So we can do that. So let's talk about hyperlocalization. Right now, all of our VFX shots, for instance, that are created at houses really work in layers. So we may have a muzzle flash for a bullet. We may have a blood layer. We may have smoke that comes from the gun, all on separate layers. They're then all smushed together and sent to the editing room. What happens if we didn't smush them together? What happens if we kept them separate? Right, so now let's do the sentiment analysis of each of the layers, each of the colors, because of the color science, as well as any person who's on the frame, who's inside the frame. And now, let's send the layers, combining it with the data that we have, which associates your IP address. Your IP address is different, yours is different. So now we can take this and know that, let's say on Amazon Prime, you like material, or stop watching material after a scene with lots of blood. And so maybe you don't like blood so much. So maybe we can deliver you a different version than you and different version than you at the carrier end. And so as we go to the home, because we can manipulate the opacity of each of those individual layers, we can perhaps give you different versions of the same film, the same TV show, the same work. This is going to require more than the technology. This is going to require a whole bunch of creatives to stop being so possessive of the one true version. My students at USC who don't care about this, who are not troubled by this, usually come out of gaming. People who've been gamers their lives like to give, they have no problem giving the audience the agency to create their own. But what excites me is the ability to deliver multiple versions for personalized experiences in the home, in a theater, in wherever. as well as the idea, wouldn't it be like really nice if when I was checking out at the grocery store and they have that stupid video up there playing, I don't know what it is, or at the gas station over my pump and I see the same WNBC, sorry if there's someone from NBC here, news wrap up. Wouldn't it be nice if they could tailor it to my license plate? So this enables us to do that. That's very exciting for me as a creative. So just to wrap up, John Smith, who is at IBM Research, says something that I think is really important in terms of what is it good for. It's easy for AI to come up with something novel just randomly, but what we need to move towards is something that is novel and unexpected and useful. So I think that for the creatives, this is the kind of thing that we are hungering for, even if we don't know we're hungering for, and why we should not be resistant to it. So I want to thank you for sitting through the creative side of things. And we have a few minutes left for questions, if you've got any. If not, we'll ask you questions, so be careful. Or we could all take 5 minutes for coffee. Okay, go Yvonne.
Is it on? Yeah. So you had an interesting point also on the face replacement, and we all know the example from Obama, and so we've seen that. What I'm interested is also in daily things that we interact with AI, whether this is Alexa or Siri or something like the face replacement. It's always us humans trying to adapt to the technology, to AI, right? So, I mean, we have to call Alexa, Alexa, and then being very precise on what Alexa is supposed to do, what we want her to do. And like the same, this guy had very, very extreme mimics, so it wasn't really neutral. But in order to use the technology, it seems that we have to change and adapt a bit to technology so it understands what we're saying or what we want to express emotions. Do you see this technology to evolve, that it becomes more natural?
Okay, so that's a great question. I'll say, first of all, I feel it's more nuanced than we're adapting to their world, to AI's world. I think the fact that we have to call on Siri or Alexa when we need them, rather than always being on and always answering everything we're asking, is them adapting to us a little bit. So I think it's a partnership. Anybody who's in the forefront of thinking about AI always talks about the collaboration between the AI technology and the humans, that's actually the way I think it's going to go, and they think it's going to go as well. But having said that, I will say that there's evidence, even as you're talking right now, about, for instance, in Apple Photos, the way that it will generate using facial recognition and visual recognition. I really want to see all of the oranges, and it can go through and find all the oranges. That, I think, is saying, how can I help you? And frankly, if I could get my daughter to say that, that would be awesome. So I think that the partnership is really most. Okay. Anybody else? We creatives scare people.
I don't want to move this in a different direction, but non-scripted, documentary-type reality televisions, nothing that you seem to have discussed here, and I wondered if you could comment on its application, AI's application in production and post-production in particular, because you're dealing with a much larger volume of content, and it's not scripted. There's a rough shot list, but nothing. It seems like that's where AI could really help when you're dealing with 5,000 to 1 shooting ratio.
And exactly right. I think your point is well taken. That right now, documentaries are the largest users of transcription services because simply the volume of information that they have and the ability to quickly search on things and find the right clip that you want is precisely what AI can do for them. Going beyond that, I still think it's about sentiment analysis. I still think it's about facial recognition. If I could search across this large amounts of material, and we're beginning to see this in facial recognition as well in the editing room. So for me, anything that has more footage than your typical vlog will benefit from the search that AI can give. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I much appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please tap the like button and also subscribe to our channel to receive notifications when we add new content. For more information about us, please visit SMPTE.org. We'll see you next time.